he brought together all of those hospitals, doctors, medical programs, and created a statewide university, which is known as the Indiana Plan, and which really is the forerunner of IU Health, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And I read last month in Montana that IU Health is now the #1 employer in the state of Indiana. We're really selling Glenn W. Irwin short if we just talk about his accomplishments. He and I were the same generation, although he was quite a few years older than me. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk something about Glenn Irwin personally, the man. I will tell you that the way he treated fellow doctors and co-workers and employees of Indiana University is simply marvelous. He knew everybody. He never was too busy to stop and talk to them. He had a kind word for everyone. His bedside manner, the way he cared for patients, I will tell you right now, was a very great inspiration to this young medical student, this young doctor, and still today, and yes, I still practice medicine, still today, the way I take care of patients is influenced by Glenn W. Irwin, Jr. Well, to the exhibit. I view those items as tiny time capsules that can whisk us back in time and bring back memories. And Chris Lusser and Malcolm Romine were questioning my sanity when I took a 25-pound sledgehammer and shipped it UPS from Montana to Indiana. But the truth is that that sledgehammer is a great segue into a story which I want to tell. And that's the story of the great Roachdale Bank and Trust Company bank robbery on December 16th, 1931. Now I'll tell you folks, this was no amateur job. This was a professional job. And there were 8, perhaps 10 people involved in the robbery. It occurred late at night. And the bank robbers had obviously scouted out the town very, very well. They knew what time the last train passed through town. And as soon as that train had passed through town, a couple of them went to the depot and kidnapped Mr. F.R. Jarvis, who was a telegraph operator for the B&O and Monon Railroads. They kidnapped Mr. Jarvis, cut all the telegraph lines coming out of the depot, and simultaneously another group went into the electric plant and cut all the electricity to the town. Now, they also wanted to cut the telephone lines. The telephone office was located above the bank that was being robbed. In that office was the 17-year-old night operator, Pauline Smith. Can you imagine today a 17-year-old being given the responsibility to manage a telephone office? The plan was to take Mr. Jarvis and lock him in the Roachdale jail, which was a brick building with a steel door. And I will tell you that steel door in Montana right now is the entrance to Jan and Mai's wine cellar. The plan was that, I don't remember the building being a jail. I remember it being an ice house, but I do remember the building. And so the plan was to take Mr. Jarvis and lock him in the jail until they could complete the robbery. But Mr. Jarvis was very concerned about Pauline Smith, 17-year-old Pauline Smith, being up in the telephone office by herself. And he begged the robbers to let him go up there and be with her so that she wouldn't be afraid. She also had with her Marjorie, her 7-year-old sister. So Mr. Jarvis was allowed to spend the moments of the robbery above the bank in the telephone office with Pauline and Marjorie Smith. Here's where the hammer comes in. The hammer was used to drive a steel wedge into the seam of the door just above the hinges. And you get a little bit of space, and you pour in some nitroglycerin, and you blow the hinge. Well, the first blast doesn't quite do it, it just makes the hole bigger. So then you have blast number 2, blast number 3, and it actually took 4 blasts to blow the hinges off the door. After the first blast, a gentleman by the name of Ed Monk Grantham, who lived in a store, see people nodding their heads here, lived in a store back behind the Inman Hotel. And he heard the first blast, thought certainly something must be amiss, got his squirrel gun off the out of the behind the door, went out, saw a shadowy figure standing at the back of the bank, and fired a shot at him. Well, that shot was answered by a hail of gunshot from a Thompson submachine gun, so Monk decided he would just tuck back inside the house. Well, the robbery was successful. They got $4,500 and they were never caught. So. And that robbery, along with another robbery at the Lisbon Bank just a few weeks before, really kind of set people on their edge. It was the Depression, and a lot of people had figured out that the best way to get money during the Depression was to rob banks. And another person that was getting a lot of attention around that time was a young man who was born in Mooresville, Indiana, by the name of John Dillinger. So my father, Galen Irwin, and others decided that there should be a Putnam County vigilante. And you can read about the Putnam County vigilante in some newspaper clippings in here. So Galen Irwin was president of the Putnam County vigilante. On Friday afternoon, October 20th, 1933, he received a phone call from the Indiana State Police giving him a tip that John Dillinger planned to rob the Roachdale Bank the following Monday. Now, I think my dad probably had a restless weekend. But he came up with a plan. There was an air duct over the vault that had a cover over it. So he went there and he removed that vent off of the duct over the vault and built himself a little nest up there, carried money bags up and made a barrier out of the money bags and also a rest for his gun. And he laid up there that day waiting for Dillinger to come in the front door so he could kill him. One of the guns that laid with him that day is a Colt 45 single action model that you see out here in one of the display cabinets. He had that gun as well as a shotgun and a rifle, so he was well armed. Well, we don't know for sure what happened, but Dillinger may have been tipped off that Roachdale was alerted and waiting for him. But more likely what Dillinger decided was that October weekend was homecoming at DePaul University. And he knew that Central National Bank in Greencastle would be flush with cash. So he decided instead of going to Roachdale that he would take Central National Bank in Greencastle. And he did that successfully, very successfully. He got $74,782. The largest haul in his 11-year spree of crime came out of Central National Bank in Greencastle. Now, it's Greencastle legend about what happened after that robbery, and I shouldn't even tell the story, but just in case some of you don't know, I will. But there was a hardware store just down the street from Central National Bank. And the proprietor of the hardware store looked out, saw what was going on, and decided he was going to stop Dillinger. So he went back to the nail bins, got a box of nails, took them out, and threw them in the street. Pneumatic tires, flat tires, we got Dillinger. Well, good idea, but of course what happened is Dillinger pulls out, after he gets his $74,000 plus, goes the other way. But guess who did come down that street? The police. Another item, two other items I would like to just briefly mention in the display to mention is I would like you to pay some particular attention to those Arm & Hammer bird cards. You're all familiar with Arm & Hammer baking soda, and Arm & Hammer baking soda still today is made by a company in New York called Church & Dwight. And at the turn of the century, Arm & Hammer, Church & Dwight, came up with a marvelous advertising scheme to put a tiny card in each box of baking soda. And those cards were designed by some of the country's foremost wildlife artists. Jean Moose Arnault, Louis Agassiz Furties, Mary Eaton, Hy Hintermeister, all designed these tiny bird cards that went in boxes of baking soda. And these are wonderful collectibles, and they're available today. You can still find them, you can still come across them. And they make a wonderful collection. What Church & Dwight also did is they sent large store display cards to the stores to be displayed in the window advertising Church & Dwight or Arm & Hammer. And so those two bird cards are store cards or window cards that were in the Irwin drugstore. The other item that I would like to mention briefly that requires a little bit of explanation is what's known as the Putnam County Spade. Now, that prehistoric artifact doesn't have any particular significance to my family other than that in the 1960s, my father cabineted that piece for his collection. And it's a marvelous piece. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. We know a lot about the provenance of it. It's been in some of those famous collections in the country, but we don't know very much about the provenience of it. We don't know where in Putnam County it was found. We certainly would like to. I guess there's three things that we don't know about the piece. Well, three big things. One is we don't know exactly where in Putnam County it was found. We don't know if it was hafted or used by hand, and we don't know if it was utilitarian or if it was ceremonial. But it was first made famous in 1892. Warren K. Moorhead is perhaps the preeminent archaeologist of the 19th century, and his book, Prehistoric Implements of the North American Indian, features the Putnam County Spade, and a copy of that page is included in the exhibit. The piece probably dates late Mississippian, early woodland, but it's a very unusual piece and is a part of Putnam County prehistory. So I invite you to pay some special attention to that and read the sheet that hangs on the outside of the case. Very fortunate in having a wonderful photographer by the name of R.B. Armstrong. And the museum has a great display here of early Putnam County photography. And one of the great early Putnam County photographers lived in Roachdale, and his name was R.B. Armstrong. And the majority of the family portraits that we have were done by R.B. Armstrong. That brings me to conclusion, and I have a couple of pleas that I would like to make. First of all, I would say when I was preparing this exhibit, I unpacked lots of boxes and went through lots of photos. It was really it was a great pleasure for me to be able to do that. But so often I would come up with a photo and I would say, wonder who the person second from the left is, or wonder what date this photo was taken, or whose house is that in the background? I don't know. And there's nobody to ask now. That history is gone. And I would like to put a plea out to all of you to go to your family archives, go to your photographs, and write on the back of them, not with a ballpoint pen, but with a number 2 lead pencil, what they are, who those people are, what year they were taken, and what the place is that the photo occurred at. If you don't do that, the history is going to be lost. And the second thing I would like to plead is that you talk to the older people in your families, talk to the older people in your community, write down what they have to say, or better yet, record it. You know, every time one of these older people in our community or our family dies, it's like an entire library burning to the ground, and the history is lost. And it's our challenge to preserve that history. Santiago said one time, those who don't remember history are condemned to relive it. And that's our task, that's our job. We can do that, and we need to do that. Well, with all my regards to Robin Williams, I would like to say it's been a real pleasure spending a morning at the museum with each of you. I would like to thank you all for coming, and God bless Putnam County, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Yeah, I knew that. I'm not sure. I saw her picture yesterday
okay,
at Parents Farm. We went back and walked that farm
Here's my
Look at the hair.
Just straight out. I mean, straight from smart kids.
Oh, really? Yeah, really? Racetrack.
How are you doing?
I remember helping create that.
Our family, when they
So you went to the
Everywhere he goes, he teachers did a great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Go out on the weekend.
It is a lot, you know, it really is. And I think we all do if we just don't forget it, you know. I think,
Good advice.
yeah,
Are your
really.
boys interested in all of this?
Not as much as I am. Isn't that kind of classic? Yeah. They are. They are. They may. They may. I mean, they've been pretty busy with school and starting jobs and families, and I think once they have a little bit more time to think about it, then I think they will be, you know. So, Dave Serber called me the other day. Yeah, from Nashville, Tennessee. And he wanted to talk.
Yeah, he stops by and sees me all the time. And he emails me all kinds of stuff.
Does he really? Yeah, he called me the other day. I hadn't heard from him for a long, long time.
I raised up around Barnard and Roachdale, and I knew Galen that lived at the bank.
Yeah.
The bank. Well, I always heard that when the guys robbed the bank, in order to get away, they set a fire and burned the town. And it used to be up there, when you go north out of town, that first curve, where they said Roachdale was there, and they built it back 2 miles south.
No, I haven't heard that.
I've heard that all my life.
Have you really?
Yeah. I don't know whether it's true or not.
I don't know either. Well, we can research and find out, okay?
Oh, you're on that computer right.
Oh, no, I'm not good at the computer. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Okay, great.